Beginnings of U.S. President Trump, Part 4. After he assumed the presidency, Trump was the subject of increasing Justice Department and congressional scrutiny, with investigations covering his election campaign, transition, and inauguration, actions taken during his presidency, along with his private businesses, personal taxes, and charitable foundation. There were 30 investigations of Trump, including 10 federal criminal investigations, 8 state and local investigations, and 12 congressional investigations. During the 2016 presidential election campaign, American Media, Inc., the parent company of the National Enquirer, and a company set up by Cohen, paid Playboy model Karen McDougal and adult film actress Stormy Daniels for keeping silent about their alleged affairs with Trump between 2006 and 2007. Cohen pleaded guilty in 2018 to breaking campaign finance laws, saying he had arranged both payments at the direction of Trump to influence the presidential election. Trump denied the affairs and claimed he was not aware of Cohen's payment to Daniels, but he reimbursed him in 2017. Federal prosecutors asserted that Trump had been involved in discussions regarding non-disclosure payments as early as 2014. Court documents showed that the FBI believed Trump was directly involved in the payment to Daniels, based on calls he had with Cohen in October 2016. Federal prosecutors closed the investigation in 2019, but the Manhattan District Attorney subpoenaed the Trump Organization and AMI for records related to the payments and the Trump Organization for 8 years of tax returns. In November 2022, the New York Times reported that Manhattan prosecutors were newly optimistic about building a case against Trump. In January 2017, American intelligence agencies, the CIA, the FBI, and the NSA, represented by the Director of National Intelligence, jointly stated with high confidence that the Russian government interfered in the 2016 presidential election to favor the election of Trump. In March 2017, FBI Director James Comey told Congress the FBI, as part of our counterintelligence mission, is investigating the Russian government's efforts to interfere in the 2016 presidential election. That includes investigating the nature of any links between individuals associated with the Trump campaign and the Russian government, and whether there was any coordination between the campaign and Russia's efforts. Once discovered, the links between Trump associates and Russian officials were widely reported by the press. Manafort, one of Trump's campaign managers, worked from December 2004 to February 2010 to help pro-Russian politician Viktor Yanukovych win the Ukrainian presidency. Other Trump associates, including Flynn and Stone, were connected to Russian officials. Russian agents were overheard during the campaign saying they could use Manafort and Flynn to influence Trump. Members of Trump's campaign and later his White House staff, particularly Flynn, were in contact with Russian officials both before and after the November election. On December 29, 2016, Flynn talked with Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak about sanctions that were imposed that same day. Flynn later resigned in the midst of controversy over whether he misled Pence. Trump told Kislyak and Sergei Lavrov in May 2017 he was unconcerned about Russian interference in U.S. elections. Trump and his allies promoted a conspiracy theory that Ukraine, rather than Russia, interfered in the 2016 election, which was also promoted by Russia to frame Ukraine. After the Democratic National Committee was hacked, Trump first claimed it withheld its server from the FBI, second, that CrowdStrike, the company that investigated the servers, was Ukraine-based and Ukrainian-owned, and third, that the server was hidden in Ukraine. Members of the Trump administration spoke out against the conspiracy theories. FBI Crossfire Hurricane and 2017 counterintelligence investigations. The Crossfire Hurricane FBI investigation into possible links between Russia and the Trump campaign was launched in July 2016 during the campaign season. After Trump fired FBI Director James Comey in May 2017, the FBI opened a counterintelligence investigation into Trump's personal and business dealings with Russia. Crossfire Hurricane was folded into the Mueller investigation, but Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein ended the other investigation while giving the Bureau the false impression that Mueller would pursue it. In May 2017, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein appointed Robert Mueller, a former director of the FBI, special counsel for the Department of Justice, ordering him to examine any links or coordination between the Russian government and the Trump campaign. He privately told Mueller to restrict the investigation to criminal matters in connection with Russia's 2016 election interference. The special counsel also investigated whether Trump's dismissal of James Comey as FBI director constituted obstruction of justice, and the Trump campaign's possible ties to Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Turkey, Qatar, Israel, and China. Trump denied collusion between his campaign and the Russian government. He sought to fire Mueller and shut down the investigation multiple times but backed down after his staff objected or after changing his mind. He bemoaned the recusal of Attorney General Jeff Sessions on Russia matters, stating that Sessions should have stopped the investigation. In March 2019, Mueller concluded his investigation and gave his report to Attorney General William Barr. 2 days later, Barr sent a letter to Congress purporting to summarize the report's main conclusions. A federal court, as well as Mueller himself, said Barr had mischaracterized the investigation's conclusions, confusing the public. Trump repeatedly and falsely claimed that the investigation exonerated him. The Mueller report expressly stated that it did not exonerate him. A redacted version of the report was publicly released in April 2019. It found that Russia interfered in 2016 to favor Trump's candidacy and hinder Clinton's. Despite numerous links between the Russian government and the Trump campaign, the prevailing evidence did not establish that Trump campaign members conspired or coordinated with Russian interference. The report revealed sweeping Russian interference and detailed how Trump and his campaign welcomed and encouraged it, believing it would benefit electorally from information stolen and released through Russian efforts. The report also detailed multiple acts of potential obstruction of justice by Trump, but did not make a traditional prosecutorial judgment on whether Trump broke the law, suggesting that Congress should make such a determination. Investigators decided they could not apply an approach that could potentially result in a judgment that the president committed crimes, as an Office of Legal Counsel opinion stated that a sitting president could not be indicted, and investigators would not accuse him of a crime when he cannot clear his name in court. The report concluded that Congress, having the authority to take action against a president for wrongdoing, may apply the obstruction laws. The House of Representatives subsequently launched an impeachment inquiry following the Trump-Ukraine scandal, but did not pursue an article of impeachment related to the Mueller investigation. Several Trump associates pleaded guilty or were convicted in connection with Mueller's investigation and related cases. Manafort, convicted on 8 felony counts, Deputy Campaign Manager Rick Gates, Foreign Policy Advisor Papadopoulos, and Flynn. Cohen pleaded guilty to lying to Congress about Trump's 2016 attempts to reach a deal with Russia to build a Trump Tower in Moscow. Cohen said he had made the false statements on behalf of Trump, who was identified as Individual 1 in the court documents. In February 2020, Stone was sentenced to 40 months in prison for lying to Congress and witness tampering regarding his attempts to learn more about hacked Democratic emails during the 2016 election. The sentencing judge said Stone was prosecuted for covering up for the president. In August 2019, a whistleblower filed a complaint with the Inspector General of the intelligence community about a July 25 phone call between Trump and President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky, during which Trump had pressured Zelensky to investigate CrowdStrike and Democratic presidential candidate Biden and his son Hunter, adding that the White House had attempted to cover up the incident. The whistleblower stated that the call was part of a wider campaign by the Trump administration and Giuliani that may have included withholding financial aid from Ukraine in July 2019 and canceling Pence's May 2019 Ukraine trip. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi initiated a formal impeachment inquiry on September 24. Trump then confirmed that he withheld military aid from Ukraine, offering contradictory reasons for the decision. On September 25, the Trump administration released a memorandum of the phone call which confirmed that, after Zelensky mentioned purchasing American anti-tank missiles, Trump asked him to discuss investigating Biden and his son with Giuliani and Barr. The testimony of multiple administration officials and former officials confirmed that this was part of a broader effort to further Trump's personal interests by giving him an advantage in the upcoming presidential election. In October, William B. Taylor, Jr., the chargé d'affaires for Ukraine, testified before congressional committees that soon after arriving in Ukraine in June 2019, he found that Zelensky was being subjected to pressure directed by Trump and led by Giuliani. According to Taylor and others, the goal was to coerce Zelensky into making a public commitment investigating the company that employed Hunter Biden, as well as rumors about Ukrainian involvement in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. He said it was made clear that until Zelensky made such an announcement, the administration would not release scheduled military aid for Ukraine and not invite Zelensky to the White House. On December 13, the House Judiciary Committee voted along party lines to pass 2 articles of impeachment, one for abuse of power and one for obstruction of Congress. After debate, the House of Representatives impeached Trump on both articles on December 18. The Senate impeachment trial began on January 16, 2020. On January 22, the Republican Senate majority rejected amendments proposed by the Democratic minority to call witnesses and subpoena documents. Evidence collected during the House impeachment proceedings was entered into the Senate record. For 3 days, January 22, 24, the House impeachment managers presented their case to the Senate. They cited evidence to support charges of abuse of power and obstruction of Congress, and asserted that Trump's actions were exactly what the Founding Fathers had in mind when they created the Constitution's impeachment process. Responding over the next 3 days, Trump's lawyers did not deny the facts as presented in the charges but said Trump had not broken any laws or obstructed Congress. They argued that the impeachment was constitutionally and legally invalid because Trump was not charged with a crime and that abuse of power is not an impeachable offense. On January 31, the Senate voted against allowing subpoenas for witnesses or documents. 51 Republicans formed the majority for this vote. The impeachment trial was the first in U.S. history without witness testimony. Trump was acquitted of both charges by the Republican Senate majority, 52-48 on abuse of power and 53-47 on obstruction of Congress. Senator Mitt Romney was the only Republican who voted to convict Trump on one charge, the abuse of power. Following his acquittal, Trump fired impeachment witnesses and other political appointees and career officials he deemed insufficiently loyal. Breaking with precedent, Trump filed to run for a second term with the FEC within a few hours of assuming the presidency. He held his first re-election rally less than a month after taking office and officially became the Republican nominee in August 2020. In his first 2 years in office, Trump's re-election committee reported raising $67.5 million and began 2019 with $19.3 million in cash. By July 2020, the Trump campaign and the Republican Party had raised $1.1 billion and spent $800 million, losing their cash advantage over Biden. The cash shortage forced the campaign to scale back advertising spending. Starting in spring 2020, Trump began to sow doubts about the election, claiming without evidence that the election would be rigged and that the expected widespread use of mail balloting would produce massive election fraud. In July, Trump raised the idea of delaying the election. When, in August, the House of Representatives voted for a $25 billion grant to the U.S. Postal Service for the expected surge in mail voting, Trump blocked funding, saying he wanted to prevent any increase in voting by mail. He repeatedly refused to say whether he would accept the results of the election and commit to a peaceful transition of power if he lost. Trump campaign advertisements focused on crime, claiming that cities would descend into lawlessness if Biden won the presidency. Trump repeatedly misrepresented Biden's positions and shifted to appeals to racism. Biden won the election on November 3, receiving 81.3 million votes to Trump's 74.2 million and 306 Electoral College votes to Trump's 232. At 2 a.m. the morning after the election, with the results still unclear, Trump declared victory. After Biden was projected the winner days later, Trump said, "This election is far from over and baselessly alleged election fraud." Trump and his allies filed many legal challenges to the results, which were rejected by at least 86 judges in both the state and federal courts, including by federal judges appointed by Trump himself, finding no factual or legal basis. Trump's unsubstantiated allegations of widespread voting fraud were also refuted by state election officials. After Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency Director Chris Krebs contradicted Trump's fraud allegation, Trump dismissed him on November 17. On December 11, the U.S. Supreme Court declined to hear a case from the Texas Attorney General that asked the court to overturn the election results in 4 states won by Biden. Trump withdrew from public activities in the weeks following the election. He initially blocked government officials from cooperating in Biden's presidential transition. After 3 weeks, the administrator of the General Services Administration declared Biden the apparent winner of the election, allowing the disbursement of transition resources to his team. Trump still did not formally concede while claiming he recommended the GSA begin transition protocols. The Electoral College formalized Biden's victory on December 14. From November to January, Trump repeatedly sought help to overturn the results of the election, personally pressuring various Republican local and state office holders, Republican state and federal legislators, the Justice Department, and Vice President Pence, urging various actions such as replacing presidential electors or a request for Georgia officials to find votes and announce a recalculated result. On February 10, 2021, Georgia prosecutors opened a criminal investigation into Trump's efforts to subvert the election in Georgia. Trump did not attend Biden's inauguration, leaving Washington for Florida hours before. In December 2020, Newsweek reported the Pentagon was on red alert, and ranking officers had discussed what they would do if Trump decided to declare martial law. The Pentagon responded with quotes from defense leaders that the military has no role to play in the outcome of elections. When Trump moved supporters into positions of power at the Pentagon after the November 2020 election, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Mark Milley and CIA Director Gina Haspel became concerned about the threat of a possible coup attempt or military action against China or Iran. Milley insisted that he should be consulted about any military orders from Trump, including the use of nuclear weapons, and he instructed Haspel and NSA Director Paul Nakasone to monitor developments closely. On January 6, 2021, while congressional certification of the presidential election results was taking place in the United States Capitol, Trump held a rally at the Ellipse, Washington, D.C., where he called for the election result to be overturned and urged his supporters to take back our country by marching to the Capitol to show strength and fight like hell. Trump's speech started at noon. By 12:30 p.m., rally attendees had gathered outside the Capitol, and at 1 p.m., his supporters pushed past police barriers onto Capitol grounds. Trump's speech ended at 1:10 p.m., and many supporters marched to the Capitol as he had urged, joining the crowd there. Around 2:15 p.m. the mob broke into the building, disrupting certification and causing the evacuation of Congress. During the violence, Trump posted mixed messages on Twitter and Facebook, eventually tweeting to the rioters at 6 p.m., "Go home with love and in peace," but describing them as great patriots and very special, while still complaining that the election was stolen. After the mob was removed from the Capitol, Congress reconvened and confirmed the Biden election win in the early hours of the following morning. There were many injuries, and 5 people, including a Capitol police officer, died. On January 11, 2021, an article of impeachment charging Trump with incitement of insurrection against the U.S. government was introduced to the House. The House voted 232,197 to impeach Trump on January 13, making him the first U.S. president to be impeached twice. The impeachment, which was the most rapid in history, followed an unsuccessful bipartisan effort to strip Trump of his powers and duties via Section 4 of the 25th Amendment. 10 Republicans voted for impeachment, the most members of a party ever to vote to impeach a president of their own party. On February 13, following a 5-day Senate trial, Trump was acquitted when the Senate voted 57-43 for conviction, falling 10 votes short of the 2/3 majority required to convict. 7 Republicans joined every Democrat in voting to convict, the most bipartisan support in any Senate impeachment trial of a president or former president. Most Republicans voted to acquit Trump, although some held him responsible but felt the Senate did not have jurisdiction over former presidents. Included in the latter group was McConnell, who said Trump was practically and morally responsible for provoking the events of the day, but constitutionally not eligible for conviction. At the end of his term, Trump went to live at his Mar-a-Lago club. As provided for by the former President's Act, he established an office there to handle his post-presidential activities. Trump's false claims concerning the 2020 election were commonly referred to as the big lie in the press and by his critics. In May 2021, Trump and his supporters attempted to co-opt the term, using it to refer to the election itself. The Republican Party used Trump's false election narrative to justify the imposition of new voting restrictions in its favor. As late as July 2022, Trump was still pressuring state legislators to overturn the 2020 election by rescinding the state's electoral votes for Biden. Trump resumed his campaign-style rallies with an 85-minute speech at the annual North Carolina Republican Party convention on June 6, 2021. On June 26, he held his first public rally since the January 6 rally that preceded the riot at the Capitol. Unlike other former presidents, Trump continued to dominate his party. He has been compared to a modern-day party boss. He continued fundraising, raising more than twice as much as the Republican Party itself, hinted at a third candidacy, and profited from fundraisers many Republican candidates held at Mar-a-Lago. Much of his focus was on the people in charge of elections and how elections are run. In the 2022 midterm elections, he endorsed over 200 candidates for various offices, most of whom support his claim that the 2020 presidential election was stolen from him. Though there are exceptions, Trump's endorsement has been seen as important for candidates in Republican primary elections. Trump registered a new company in February 2021. Trump Media and Technology Group was formed for providing social networking services to customers in the United States. In October 2021, Trump announced the planned merger of TMTG with Digital World Acquisition, a special-purpose acquisition company. A main backer of the SPAC is China-based financier ARK Group, who was reportedly involved in setting up the proposed merger. The transaction is under investigation by the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. In February 2022, TMTG launched Truth Social, a Twitter-like social media platform. Trump is the subject of several probes into his business dealings and his actions both before and during the presidency. In February 2021, the district attorney for Fulton County, Georgia, announced a criminal probe into Trump's phone calls to Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. The New York State Attorney General's office is conducting criminal investigations into Trump's business activities in conjunction with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. By May 2021, a special grand jury was considering indictments. In July 2021, New York prosecutors charged the Trump Organization with a 15-year scheme to defraud the government. The organization's chief financial officer, Alan Weisselberg, was arraigned on grand larceny, tax fraud, and other charges. In December 2021, the New York State Attorney General's office subpoenaed Trump to produce documents related to the business. On April 25, 2022, New York State Judge Arthur Engoron held Trump in contempt of court for failing to comply with the subpoena. He imposed a fine of $10,000 per day until he complies. Trump was deposed in August and invoked his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination more than 400 times. In September 2022, the Attorney General of New York filed a civil fraud case against Trump, his 3 oldest children, and the Trump Organization. When Trump left the White House in January 2021, he took government documents and material with him to Mar-a-Lago. By May 2021, the National Archives and Records Administration, The federal agency that preserves government records realized that important documents had not been turned over to them at the end of Trump's term and asked his office to locate them. In January 2022, they retrieved 15 boxes of White House records from Mar-a-Lago. NARA later informed the Department of Justice that some of the retrieved documents were classified material. The Justice Department began an investigation in April 2022 and convened a grand jury. The Justice Department sent Trump a subpoena for additional material on May 11. On June 3, Justice Department officials visited Mar-a-Lago and received some classified documents from Trump's lawyers. One of the lawyers signed a statement affirming that all material marked as classified had been returned to the government. Later that month, an additional subpoena was sent requesting surveillance footage from Mar-a-Lago, which was provided. On August 8, 2022, FBI agents searched Trump's residence, office, and storage areas at Mar-a-Lago to recover government documents and material Trump had taken with him when he left office in violation of the Presidential Records Act, reportedly including some related to nuclear weapons. The search warrant, authorized by U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland and approved by a federal magistrate judge, and the written inventory of the seized items were made public on August 12. The text of the search warrant indicates an investigation of potential violations of the Espionage Act and obstruction of justice laws. The items taken in the search included 11 sets of classified documents, 4 of them tagged as top secret and 1 as top secret, SCI, the highest level of classification. On November 18, 2022, Garland appointed a special counsel, federal prosecutor Jack Smith, to oversee the federal criminal investigations into Trump retaining government property at Mar-a-Lago and examining Trump's role in the events leading up to the January 6, 2021, Capitol attack. Trump registered his candidacy for the 2024 United States presidential election with the Federal Election Commission on November 15, 2022 and set up a fundraising account. Trump was the only president to never reach a 50% approval rating in the Gallup poll dating to 1938. The approval ratings showed a record partisan gap, 88% among Republicans, 7% among Democrats. Until September 2020, the ratings were unusually stable, reaching a high of 49% and a low of 35%. Trump finished his term with a record low approval rating of between 29% and 34% and a record low average of 41% throughout his presidency. In Gallup's annual poll asking Americans to name the man they admire the most, Trump placed second to Obama in 2017 and 2018, tied with Obama for most admired man in 2019, and was named most admired in 2020. Since Gallup started conducting the poll in 1948, Trump is the first elected president not to be named most admired in his first year in office. A Gallup poll in 134 countries comparing the approval ratings of U.S. leadership between the years 2016 and 2017 found that Trump led Obama in job approval in only 29, most of them non-democracies, with approval of U.S. leadership plummeting among allies and G7 countries. Overall ratings were similar to those in the last 2 years of the George W. Bush presidency. By mid-2020, only 16% of international respondents to a 13-nation Pew Research poll expressed confidence in Trump, a lower score than those historically accorded to Russia's Vladimir Putin and China's Xi Jinping. C-SPAN, which has surveyed presidential historians on presidential leadership each time the administration changed since 2000, ranked Trump fourth, lowest overall in their Presidential Historians Survey 2021, with Trump rated lowest in the leadership characteristics categories for moral authority and administrative skills. The Siena College Research Institute has surveyed presidential scholars during the second year of the first term of each president since 1982. For the second time, SCRI ranked Trump third lowest overall. He was ranked last on background, integrity, intelligence, foreign policy accomplishments, and executive appointments, and second to last on ability to compromise, executive ability, and present overall view. He was ranked near the bottom in all categories except for luck, willingness to take risks, and party leadership. Trump's social media presence attracted attention worldwide since he joined Twitter in 2009. He frequently tweeted during the 2016 election campaign and as president, until his ban in the final days of his term. Over 12 years, Trump posted around 57,000 tweets, often using Twitter as a direct means of communication with the public and sidelining the press. In June 2017, a White House press secretary said that Trump's tweets were official presidential statements. Trump often announced terminations of administration officials and cabinet members over Twitter. After years of criticism for allowing Trump to post misinformation and falsehoods, Twitter began to tag some of his tweets with fact-checking warnings in May 2020. In response, Trump tweeted that social media platforms totally silence conservatives' voices and that he would strongly regulate or close them down. In the days after the storming of the United States Capitol, Trump was banned from Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and other platforms. Twitter blocked attempts by Trump and his staff to circumvent the ban through the use of others' accounts. The loss of Trump's social media megaphone, including his 88.7 million Twitter followers, diminished his ability to shape events and prompted a dramatic decrease in the volume of misinformation shared on Twitter. In May 2021, an advisory group to Facebook evaluated that site's indefinite ban of Trump and concluded that it had been justified at the time but should be re-evaluated in 6 months. In June 2021, Facebook suspended the account for 2 years. Later in June, Trump joined the video platform Rumble and began to post the messages of his website blog on the Twitter account of a spokesperson. Trump's attempts to re-establish a social media presence were unsuccessful. In May 2021, he launched a blog that had low readership and was closed after less than a month. On November 19, 2022, Twitter owner Elon Musk reinstated Trump's account. Trump had said that he would stay on his own media platform Truth Social. Trump sought media attention throughout his career, sustaining a love-hate relationship with the press. In the 2016 campaign, Trump benefited from a record amount of free media coverage, elevating his standing in the Republican primaries. The New York Times writer Amy Chozick wrote in 2018 that Trump's media dominance enthralled the public and created must-see TV. As a candidate and as president, Trump frequently accused the press of bias, calling it the fake news media and the enemy of the people. In 2018, journalist Leslie Stahl recounted Trump saying he intentionally demeaned and discredited the media, so when you write negative stories about me, no one will believe you. As president, Trump privately and publicly mused about revoking the press credentials of journalists he viewed as critical. His administration moved to revoke the press passes of 2 White House reporters, which were restored by the courts. In 2019, a member of the foreign press reported many of the same concerns as those of media in the U.S., expressing concern that a normalization process by reporters and media results in an inaccurate characterization of Trump. The Trump White House held about 100 formal press briefings in 2017, declining by half during 2018 and to 2 in 2019. Trump also deployed the legal system to intimidate the press. In early 2020, the Trump campaign sued the New York Times, the Washington Post, and CNN for defamation and opinion pieces about Russian election interference. Legal experts said that the lawsuits lacked merit and were not likely to succeed. By March 2021, the lawsuits against the New York Times and CNN had been dismissed. As a candidate and as president, Trump frequently made false statements in public speeches and remarks to an extent unprecedented in American politics. His falsehoods became a distinctive part of his political identity. Trump's false and misleading statements were documented by fact-checkers, including at the Washington Post, which tallied a total of 30,573 false or misleading statements made by Trump over his 4-year term. Trump's falsehoods increased in frequency over time, rising from about 6 false or misleading claims per day in his first year as president to 16 per day in his second year, 22 per day in his third year, and 39 per day in his final year. He reached 10,000 false or misleading claims 27 months into his term, 20,000 false or misleading claims 14 months later, and 30,000 false or misleading claims 5 months later. Some of Trump's falsehoods were inconsequential, such as his claims of a large crowd size during his inauguration. Others had more far-reaching effects, such as Trump's promotion of unproven anti-malarial drugs as a treatment for COVID-19 in a press conference and on Twitter in March 2020. The claims had consequences worldwide, such as a shortage of these drugs in the United States and panic buying in Africa and South Asia. Other misinformation, such as misattributing a rise in crime in England and Wales to the spread of radical Islamic terror, served Trump's domestic political purposes. As a matter of principle, Trump does not apologize for his falsehoods. Despite the frequency of Trump's falsehoods, the media rarely referred to them as lies. The first time the Washington Post did so was in August 2018, when it declared that some of Trump's misstatements, in particular those concerning hush money paid to Stormy Daniels and Playboy model Karen McDougal, were lies. In 2020, Trump was a significant source of disinformation on mail-in voting and misinformation on the COVID-19 pandemic. His attacks on mail-in ballots and other election practices served to weaken public faith in the integrity of the 2020 presidential election, while his disinformation about the pandemic delayed and weakened the national response to it. James Fifner, professor of policy and government at George Mason University, wrote in 2019 that Trump lies differently from previous presidents because he offers egregious false statements that are demonstrably contrary to well-known facts. These lies are the most important of all Trump lies. By calling facts into question, people will be unable to properly evaluate their government. With beliefs or policy irrationally settled by political power, this erodes liberal democracy, wrote Fifner. Soon, Donald Trump returns to the White House 2024, Part 5.